Hey, you guys. This is Rihanna, aka Miss Devious, and today I'm going to be reacting to why it's hard to care about climate change. I feel like climate change or the environment and the earth and plants and animals and all those things is very important to me. I do my very best to recycle and make eco friendly, conscious choices and make sure that I do my best to try to preserve and make my carbon footprint as small as possible. I'm also not a super freak, like some things just have to be thrown away. There's no getting around it. But the bottom line is that everything we've done to this planet absolutely affects it.
6, 5, 4, command engine start, 2, 1.
In the summer of 2021, Jeff Bezos blasted into space. On that day alone, US news networks dedicated 212 minutes to covering it. And climate change coverage? For the whole year?
Climate change is widely reported as having
human-caused climate change.
267 minutes. Networks spent almost as much time on one day covering a controversial billionaire's 10-minute space trip as they did on every aspect of climate change around the world all year.
See, this is crazy. It's because Bezos is way more important, right? If he can leave the planet, fuck this one.
But when it is covered, it can leave people feeling
sad about the current situation. I'm scared for my children.
Kind of sad.
Bit of anger, bit of frustration, not many good feelings.
Right.
And people who feel this way do not feel motivated to take climate action.
You can have all the science you want, but if you can't effectively communicate it, then it almost doesn't matter.
But we know what's wrong and how we can fix it. So let's talk about how we talk about climate change.
So it is really crazy that in comparison to Jeff Bezos' trip to outer space, trumped the climate change of the whole entire year. It's embarrassing.
Here's a thought experiment. How many magazines for cars, sports, music, or fashion can you think of? How about YouTube channels for cooking, gaming, or travel? And how many dedicated to climate change? Except ours, of course. I did a not-so-scientific experiment using some magazines I had lying around, all over 100 pages. Out of all the articles, only 2 even mentioned climate issues. This would likely vary from country to country. I also looked at the websites of some major media organizations, again, not scientifically. Climate change stories didn't feature prominently, although some pages did have sections dedicated to the topic. And here at DW, climate change gets 1 or 2 stories per day, out of the 38 on the homepage. One of the only studies on this topic found that between 1997 and 2009, climate change coverage in 27 countries made up just 0.6% of total reporting.
That's horrible.
A huge existential threat to all life on Earth, and we're just not really talking about it.
Like, you guys would rather fight about religion when if we're all dead, who cares?
To find out why, we have to go back in time to the era of bleached hair,
I really like those frosted tips.
low-rise jeans, and questionable music videos. The early 2000s. This was when climate change really hit the stage. And being an environmental scientist back then was not an easy job.
No one has ever actually had to stand up and say, we're relying on a substance that is sort of guaranteeing this wide-scale destruction, and it's like this massive task to get rid of it, and this massive consequence if we don't.
Ketan Joshi worked for Australia's National Science Agency and now consults with climate NGOs and activists to help them get their message across. Climate scientists were, and still are, charged with telling the world some really bad news. And it's also complicated to explain.
What we tend to know about climate change is in the form of tables or complex figures or numbers that are sort of difficult for the ordinary person to relate to.
Susie Wang has a background in environmental psychology and works on how we can communicate climate change better.
People are speaking about timelines that are either very far in the distant past or very far in the distant future.
There's a real appeal to simplicity and comparison. When they told me that there's like 5 garbage islands floating around in the ocean the size of Texas, that blew my mind. I think if there were more of these like relatable facts for people to kind of access more freely, people might pay attention to the statistics a little more.
Take the IPCC report. It is the most detailed look at the state of the Earth, and it's free, unlike many studies. But the summary of it is 40 pages long and starts like this. Lots of big words, certainly not light reading.
Right.
And so many people do not have access or time to research the science on their own. Here's where the science communicators come in. NGOs, your favorite Twitter stars, that one friend who really likes animals,
me,
and the journalists, like myself. But it is literally my job to know this stuff, and I had to look up what cryosphere means. It's the frozen water on Earth.
There's so many journalists back home, who want to do this, but they don't even have the knowledge.
Right.
There is very limited capacity to cover these topics, right?
Shola Lawal reports on conflict, women, and climate change. Normally based out of Lagos, she's actually just started working for DW. I was completely unaware of this when I asked her for an interview.
They don't have the journalists who can cover this in a way that is accurate, in a way that is simple for people to understand.
I just said that. Simplicity. People, the masses love simple, easy to digest chunks. If I can throw out these little facts at a party while I'm also getting drunk with my friends, maybe people will remember it and pay attention to it the next day. Meh.
And in a way that is sustainable.
There you go.
Even when there are enough journalists, climate reporting is still tough.
Because nobody wants to hear it.
A recent Oxford study found these common barriers. Climate change happens slowly, but the news cycle is fast.
Right.
The topic depresses audiences.
Yes, it does.
Covering it requires money for travel and specialized reporters.
I didn't think of that.
There's pressure from media bosses and advertisers to cover other topics. All this means the topic is underreported. And that little reporting also used to be full of misinformation.
It's not a debate, it's a discussion. Like, you can't deny the fact that we're damaging the earth. Now let's talk about it. What's the dialogue next?
According to a landmark paper published in 2004, it was due to the pursuit of balanced reporting.
Print media often gave equal credence or space to relevant experts or scientists, as well as climate deniers or skeptics that were representing outlier views.
Right.
Lucy McAllister studies the communication of environmental issues and is the lead author on the most recent paper looking at the accuracy of reporting on climate science.
So this was, in the early 2000s, hugely misleading to the general public.
99% of scientists agree on climate change, so it's inaccurate to give all viewpoints equal weight.
Right, I just said that. It's not really a debate, it's a discussion. There isn't a question if there's a problem. There's absolutely a problem, no matter who you are. It exists. It's there.
And who were the deniers and skeptics? You can probably guess. We've covered a lot of it already in this video. The research shows that climate change information is now mostly accurate. So, is the issue solved?
The climate debate has shifted or transformed, emerged in different ways in more subtle discourses. In academic literature, it's known as discourses of delay.
Groups who 10 years ago were saying that climate change wasn't real, what they're saying now is that the energy transition is too expensive.
And these discourses are repeated everywhere, from politicians to companies. Others include individualism. You are responsible, aka the carbon footprint.
Yay, I said that in the beginning.
Technological optimism. Future technologies will save us. Fossil fuel solutionism. Fossil fuels are part of the energy transition. And the most common, all talk, little action.
Europe will be the world's first climate-neutral continent. by 2050.
Be carbon neutral for the decade.
Climate promises made by political leaders and companies that are not followed through on.
Ugh.
All of these tactics were shown in Don't Look Up, a recent movie seen as an allegory for climate change.
This comet is what we call a planet killer.
At this exact moment, I say we sit tight and assess.
Must sound familiar to climate scientists. And as a journalist, it's hard to find a middle ground here. Solutions can be expensive. Some countries continue to need fossil fuels.
Was that movie The Day After Tomorrow or something, when everything freezes and all the craziness happens? I think that's that movie. They've had movies about this topic for my entire life, and we still have made so little progress. I have more hope for right now than I ever have before.
Individual choices do make a difference. If we don't mention these aspects, we're in danger of being labeled climate activists and ignored.
Right.
And what about the viewers, readers, and listeners? The situation we're in is so huge, it's just too complex for our brains to fathom.
I can say that it's overwhelming when you do look at the statistics of how horrible things are. It's kind of mind-blowing. Like, can we fix this, or are we just like destined to blow up and poison this planet and die?
We can't see it, we can't smell it, taste it, feel it. You know, it's not an easy, visible enemy.
And the most publicized climate victims are super hard to grasp.
We're talking about how glaciers are melting.
Right.
That's not something that someone in Lagos is really going to care about.
They don't understand how the Antarctic glacier that's melting ever will affect them. It's so hard to grasp the entire volume of how widespread it is.
We naturally value what's near us more than something far away.
If it's out of sight, it's out of mind.
Naturally value what's near us more than something far away. This phenomenon is called discounting. So support for climate action decreases due to what's happening around us, like a cold winter or low gas prices. And talking about all this in the first place, probably not going to make you feel great.
When you perceive that something is threatening to you, you push it away instinctively as a way to preserve yourself.
And that's not the only way your brain avoids these issues. Let's say you know meat is bad for the environment and eat it anyway. These conflicting beliefs lead to cognitive dissonance, which is the discomfort from internal conflict.
It's kind of what I said. Like, I'm for the planet and for the earth, and I try to make all these decisions that help it, but like, I'll throw away my vacuum cleaner if I have to. Terrible.
You either change your behavior or just rationalize your choice.
So true.
And that's where we come back to the huge, complex nature of the problem. Alone, it seems like what we do makes no difference.
I think I could do more, of course, we all should do more. Or can we do enough?
Right.
Actually, right now I realize that I haven't thought about it before, but I know that it's a must.
I am just one person and I would like, but I could not do many things.
I mean, I care like a little bit about climate change, but like that has to be like globally.
Sometimes hard to be aware of all the things you do, and also sometimes I think it can be a little bit overwhelming because you feel kind of powerless.
Yes.
So what should change? Let's start with the science. Climate science needs to be more accessible and also easier to comprehend. More scientific publications need to be open access, and complicated topics need to be more relatable.
Caring about climate change means recognizing that climate change affects the other things that you care about.
You're more likely to be interested in a study about health, housing, or food than insects dying out. Luckily, or not, climate change impacts all of these areas and more. Same goes for climate reporting. It would help if it were more integrated with other topics. And
I feel like in Washington State, this has improved a lot.
Also told from the level of everyday experiences.
If you talk to people in Lagos and say, oh, have you felt that the sun just seems hotter these past years? They can immediately connect with that.
Right.
And then you can start to like expand their...
As in, literally today was the first day we've seen rain in Washington since I can't remember the beginning of summer. And we've had the last 3 years where we hit 90 plus degrees, unheard of here. So, and it's always something people want to talk about. It's something everyone has a comment about.
Their scope of knowledge and say this is why it's happening.
This places the science in context. Another example is a human lifespan over a graph of the Earth's warming. Context also helps people recognize and fight those discourses of delay, which in turn paves the way for a focus on the solutions rather than the problems. This shift reduces our impulse to push the topics away and makes people feel more engaged. Focusing on collective power over individual responsibility can also help. But perhaps most importantly, we need to talk more about the topic. We're being pushed to not care about climate change, which is just delaying the urgent action needed to combat it. Let's change that.
I feel like if anything is going to happen, this younger generation that's coming now will be the ones to really push it forward.
So what do you think? How do we get more people to care about climate change? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to come back every Friday for brand new videos. Oh, and subscribe.
Yes.
Whoa!
So cute.
So windy.
I pay extra money to have green power. I make sure that I recycle everything. But like, do I still want to take a flight to Vegas? Yes, I do. Why it's hard to care about climate change. Thank you so much for stopping by. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
And maybe we should take this by the day.